All right. Good day, good afternoon, great afternoon. Welcome to our Gravity Talks Mental Health in Schools segment. I'm your host, Vicki Yelverton, and with me today I have Natasha.
Hi, I'm Natasha Lewis, co-hosting with Miss Yelverton today. How are you guys doing?
All right. And Mr. Nash.
Hi, I'm Mr. Nash. I'm a clinical social worker, and I work with the in-school therapy program with Yelverton's Enrichment Services as an outpatient therapist.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Nash. Dr. Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Soto. I'm Social Emotional Mental Health Coordinator for Durham Public Schools.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chris. Ms. Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Harris. I'm the principal at CMX Middle School. Go Bulldogs.
Uh-oh. Okay. And Mr. Maurice.
Good evening. I'm Maurice Harris. I'm the principal at the best high school in the United States of America, and that is North Pitt High School in Pitt County. And I'm pleased to be here today.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, panel. Again, we want to just thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have an awesome panel discussion set up for you. And without further ado, we just want to dive right in. So feel free to like us, share us. We're live on Facebook as well as YouTube. And also, if you have any comments or posts that you'd like to share, please do so. And then we'll try and get to some of those to post on our dashboard. All right, so let's dive right in. Again, I'm your host, Vicki Yelverton, and today we're hosting our Gravity Talks Mental Health in the Schools. So with everything that's going on today, again, we have some questions that are catered specifically to the current pandemic and also, of course, as it pertains to mental health. So the first question is, and this question I'll go ahead and bounce over to Mr. Nash. What is your personal and or professional connection to mental health?
Okay, so professionally, mental health is actually my second career. I discovered the importance of that during my first career in the Army. I was an infantryman, and it became very obvious to me in my duties as an infantryman the importance that mental health plays and the importance that individual reality plays. Professionally, I endeavored to learn how to leverage that and that knowledge and compassion to help people, especially the folks that are at this point suffering. So,
all right, thank you, sir. Ms. Kim.
So my connection would be, I've never had a personal experience other than friends and family members that are served through mental health capacities, and more so with students, and not only connecting students, but sometimes their families, their parents or guardians as well with mental health to receive resources, and definitely see the value in that.
Okay, thank you, Kim. And Kim, y'all, is a fellow pirate of East Carolina University.
Yes, go Pirates.
Okay. Let's see, Mr. Maurice.
I'm going to unmute. My professional is like Kim. I'm a principal of a high school, so we deal with mental health cases all the time. So that's my professional, just working with them and their families. In my personal life, there are some family members that are currently being served through mental health services, and I've had worked along with them as reference, and basically just having conversations and growing up around them and knowing the issues that they have had. And so that's my personal connection with mental health services.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. And Maurice is also a fellow pirate. Go ECU.
That's right.
All right. And Dr. Chris.
Unfortunately, not a pirate. But my mom is a therapist. I gained a lot of wisdom from her. She went back to school when I was a little bit older. And I started out working with adolescents at a residential treatment facility. And one of the things that I recognized very quickly was the impact that mental wellness has on academic achievement. And then the next thing that I recognized was the impact of the wellness of adults on academic achievement and the mental wellness of kids. And so to me, I just take a very integrated approach, and currently oversee mental health services in Durham Public Schools, as well as their social emotional learning initiatives.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Chris. And speaking of Dr. Chris, we, as an agency, Yelverton Enrichment Services, we're one of the school-based therapy providers for the Durham Public School system. So we work closely with Dr. Chris as well as Ms. B. All right, cool deal. Ms. Natasha, would you like to share your connection with mental health professionally and or personally?
Yes, sure. I am actually the program director for child and adolescent day treatment. So we collaborate with schools with transitioning, gradually transitioning students back into the school setting, collaborating with teachers, participating in IEPs, as well as the school, maybe the principal and the behavior specialist, just to create and develop plans to get students integrated back into the school system. So we work with their mental health behaviors, and several different other things, and providing them with coping skills to help them transition back into school.
Okay. All right. And I'll also share, again, aside from being a proud CEO of Yelverton Enrichment Services, we've been serving the community in their mental health as well as now physical health needs for almost 15 years now. So as I like to tell people, you know, it's like dog years. So we've been doing this for almost 100 years. So I think I look good for my age, right? But also on a personal level, my connection to mental health it goes deep. You know, my mother, who's been living with or living through mental wellness, you know, just helping her navigate and gain access to different mental health supports just helped me realize the importance of having that care network. And so as we continue to do kingdom work and community-based work, we want to continue to be a beacon, so to speak, and create the level of awareness so that other people can gain access and destigmatize mental health. So, all right. So let's dive right in. Now, the first question, let's see. Some schools, and Durham Public Schools is one of the awesome school systems that embrace and understand the coexistence of mental health in the school system, but not all schools, and Wayne County schools as well. We also serve Wayne County schools. But not all school systems understand or maybe embrace it the same way. Can you tell me, like, why do you think that is? Why do some schools welcome it and why do some schools not welcome it? So let's go with, let's see, Mr. Nash.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Yelverton. I think one of the predominant reasons that schools may be unaccepting of this is that we already ask so much of schools in this society right now. I mean, and if you think about it, that's a change that has been occurring over decades. I mean, we now ask schools to, you know, they're responsible for feeding our kids, they're responsible for providing security personnel. There's just a litany of responsibilities that we've kind of put on their plate. And, you know, the job description for a teacher 20 or 30 years ago, it probably looks pretty thin compared to the job description of what we ask from teachers and folks now. I mean, it's just the facts of, you know, living in the society that we live in. You know, we with growing economic inequity and, you know, the fact that, you know, many homes now, both of the parents are asked to work outside the home to kind of maintain that, you know, upper middle class income level. I mean, there's very few families that have the luxury of, you know, being able to let the parents stay home and provide, you know, caregiving and that sort of thing. So in turn, we start asking that from the schools. Well, at what point does what the school's responsible kind of stop? You know, we haven't really found it yet because in addition to the fact that we ask so much from schools, there's such an opportunity to reach people at that point. But they have to go to school. You know, it's a law, and we have been finding recently, just in the research that says, you know, trauma in youth, depression in youth, mood disorders, you know, all types of mental health challenges deeply affect the life trajectory. I'm referring to the ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences. But where do we get these folks? Where do we get in and get that intervention? And it's in the school. So, a lot of schools it's a balancing act. What can we support? What can we not support? Where does what we're responsible for end, and where do other people start picking up the burden? So I think that's probably one of the larger barriers. Where does our responsibility stop?
Okay, that's a good handoff. Let's see, Maurice, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel that the reason why there are some school systems in Pitt County, we do value mental health services for our kids. And I think because we see that it is a need that our students, that would be a great service for our students. But just speaking with our superiors in central office, they let us know basically a lot of times school systems basically look at their needs. And if they are not experiencing a high need of mental health cases, that may limit it may kind of alter their desire to kind of add on mental health services. And so they may feel like the kids are being served by these school-based programs, such as your behavior specialist and all those things. I think, however, when it gets to a point that they feel that the school system cannot manage that workload, they find that it necessary to bring in those alternate resources like mental health services to provide those kids. And it also is a situation when it comes to finances, what families can afford and what families cannot afford those services. And so if you can get it through the school system and have school-based kind of services through the schools, that make it a lot easier for families and is able to serve more of the families who cannot. But if you're serving in a system that do not have a lot of families that are even open to expose or to share the fact that our kids are in need of those services, right, you may be the reason that they will not open up and bring more of those companies in to serve. I would also add that it could be that sometimes it depends on the service that you're receiving from what the mental health companies. If you find those companies that are really, really great, you find it to be very beneficial. If you run into some of this companies that are really not beneficial or it is not effective, it kind of to give you an idea or make you feel like, well, why are we haven't taken our time inviting them in and it's not really helping the kid? Right. So I think it's a lot of different components of why and why not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kim, what are your thoughts?
So just piggybacking kind of off of what both of them said, sometimes from the school base, you think academics, you're just thinking academics and you think that's taking more time out of the classroom. But then you have to realize if I don't break through the issues at hand, then I'm not going to be effective in the classroom either way. So you have to do what's on forefront and tackle the outer layer first, to break down the barriers on the inside. And like was mentioned, just removing the stigmatism of mental health, because everyone receives mental health. If you're at the top of the top, or on the bottom, everybody needs mental health. And if you have ever taken the ACEs survey, you will see the range of people that would almost 95% of the population will probably qualify of some type of mental health services. So just knowing if you can break that stigmatism and get to the root of the problems, because and the relationship piece, you have to have a relationship with the providers that are there. And just I have been able to be blessed and really talk to parents and the providers that I've worked with in the school. The kids just always want to go see them. When is so-and-so coming? When are they coming back? So even when the school is not in, they want to connect with them. And that means a lot, to have that personal connection and a relationship with them.
That's an awesome point, because that rapport is everything. Especially when you're able to break through when the student requests, when is so-and-so coming, right? That means you're making progress. Dr. Chris, what are your thoughts about the question?
So going back to what Mr. Nash said, because I think we've all taken our cues from his initial response, and it was so spot on, which is that there's really a question about responsibility. And then to add an additional layer to that, one of the things that I have recognized is how difficult emotions are for people to define and accept, because they're internal. And I think as a society, we still have this sort of Freudian deep hydraulic notion of what a feeling and emotion is, that it's something dark that needs to be packaged away, that we are a rational society, and that we think, rather than having emotions be joyful, rich experiences that we can all participate in and actually find real strong use for, including academic learning. I find that we have not really been good as a society about teaching children, and I have two. You can see their artwork right behind me, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we have not always been good about giving kids a handbook for their internal self. And that only gets more challenging as we get older, as kids get into school, and we're looking at behaviors as something that we need to be able to identify and control, rather than something that deserves children's voice and allowing them to grow into whatever next step of their world they're going to be heading towards. And so as a result, I think we focus on behavior a lot more, because it's easier to identify, and it somehow feels less threatening than identifying behaviors and keeping it in that domain. So yeah, and as a side note, I really appreciate conversations where I forget that I'm on camera, because I've really enjoyed already listening to the responses.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chris. I appreciate that. So, Natasha, what are your thoughts about, with the school system and mental health coexisting?
Well, I actually don't have thoughts. I have more questions, actually. And it's just one question that I want to ask just to the principals. And it's just in regards to, how do you adjust with, when you identify that there's a need for mental health, being that you guys already welcomed that in, because of the stigma and the responsibility, all of the things that everyone's talked about. How do you deal with that? Because I found that not all parents are accepting to allowing their child to participate in mental health services. So how do you guys, I know that building a rapport with the parent is good, but sometimes they still say no. How do you guys deal with that?
And Kim, you want to go ahead? I'll wait.
Well, I was just going to say, actually, where I'm at now, I just came here in February. So I'm at a new school to me, but I came from a school that I had been at for 10 years. So I had a great relationship with the families there. And I think just being able to sit down and have a real conversation where they didn't feel like I was the principal telling them this outside information, they felt more connected to me and was more receptive. And just to have the conversation of, it's okay, nobody's judging you. They were more receptive. I have had a couple, but literally like 2 that I can think of that just denied the services and I think it was more so they didn't want to acknowledge that there was a need for them. But just the relationship, and Mr. Harris and I actually worked together for 4 years at the same school. We were Harris and Harris. So we go long way from college, and then he went to the high school. I came from the elementary. So we served the same attendance area for a lot of our educational career. So there is a deep relationship there with the families. So again, I think it's just them knowing that we meant what we said to them from our heart. And it was coming from it. And again, it goes back to the relationship piece. But they have been very receptive, that dealings that I have had with people with referrals.
And I would like to add to that. I would like to add the piece of trust. When the families trust you, even sometimes when they have some resistance, if they trust you, they'll say, okay, I'll at least give it a try. So trust is one of the things I think, but one of the other things I think is when you share personal stories, or when you share your personal encounters with people who have benefited from mental health, I think that also helps the families to kind of say, I'll give it a try, because a lot of people feel that, something is wrong with me if I need services through a mental health agency. But when you let them know that, hey, here I am, I've had some experiences, or I know have had family members that had some experiences and they have benefited from it, and share personal stories, and it makes them feel a little more relaxed and comfortable. But also, once speaking with those kids, the parent may not agree with it, but when you build those relationships and kids trust you, they'll do anything for you. And when you talk to them about what is going on, sometimes they'll tell you before they even tell their parent what's going on.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
when you go to the parent and say, hey, are you aware that this is how your child is feeling? And Kim and I, we've been in that attendance area, like she said, and so they know and trust us. And so it's kind of hard, because when it comes to say a parent will refuse it, because the relationships we built, the trust we built with our community, they are really, if we say, hey, we know that you would benefit from this, they will give it a try just because they trust us and they know that we want what's best for their child. And so I think it's that whole trust piece, as well as sharing your personal encounters or experiences with mental health.
And if I can add also, just when the opportunity came for mental health in the schools, and it didn't take out any of their time, they didn't have to, take part of their day to take a child to an appointment, and they could actually come there. You saw them open up more to the services as well. So the opportunities here, yeah, I'm going to take advantage of it. And it's not going to inconvenience me in any way. So it's kind of like a win-win situation.
And I wanted to share too that I think with mental health in the schools, it's kind of like a perfect storm. There's two main community-based entities that I think are great portals to access the care, and that is schools and the church, right? The schools and the church. So I think that when the schools align with the community supports that are available out here, the schools can focus on teaching and education, and the provider can focus on the other situations that are going on that are impeding that student from being able to, effectively learn. So I think that this is awesome. I think if we continue to gain the momentum, continue to gain traction in having the two coexist, I do understand, just a transparent moment, I think there have been some situations that occurred with mental health being in the schools, and it probably wasn't as organized or as structured as it could have been, as it is now, for example. And I think that's the bad blood. I think that's the wedge between why some school systems haven't latched back into that. But I think now through, the managed care organizations, through the state really, enforcing a lot of the compliance and regulations, I think now is the perfect time to reincorporate that in the school system.
Definitely. I think that, right now we're getting ready to switch over, but really quickly, we've got people that are viewing right now, and the point of everything is awareness. And so in sharing awareness, if you guys could just in maybe 7 or 8 words, kind of just give us an idea of end result when we recognize the professionals of this student needs assistance and parents reject it and don't want any assistance. What's the potential end results for that? And just to kind of give examples to those that are viewing, we want to kind of let them know, because it could be something that initiated right at the end of school, could something that initiated a month ago and the parents said no, but just to kind of give them an idea of what could happen or what some potential outcomes could be if they refuse services. Anybody?
Dr. Chris, what are your thoughts, Dr. Chris?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think that the thing that comes to my mind is numbing and mistrust. That when there is an opportunity for a child to be heard, and he or she has feelings that are not acknowledged and validated, that there's a mistrust that comes with that can shut them down for a really long time.
And for me, I think it's more so the fear of the unknown. And how do you get them past the fear of the unknown, and also make the parent feel that you didn't do anything wrong. You haven't neglected your child, and don't take on that as a reason why and you're embarrassed by that. Just know that I am here to help my child, and that is my job as a parent, to make sure that my child get the best services they need so that they are safe. So I think the fear of the unknown, and also just basically just not feeling like you're a failed parent, and it's our job to make sure they know you're not a failed parent because your child is experiencing some mental health issues. And I think that's on my end.
So I think this would be a great segue into, I want to play a video. I want us to take a look at where mental health in the schools could probably be improved, right? And that may have a lot to do with communication and education. So if you bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to watch a video real quick.
Florida law after a 6-year-old was committed to a mental health facility following an incident at school.
The girl's mother is now questioning the wisdom of the Baker Act, which allows authorities to force a psychiatric evaluation on anyone considered to be a danger to themselves or others, including children.
I specifically placed my daughter at this school back in August of 2019 because I was told that they had specifically trained staff to handle special needs children.
Martina Fox says her 6-year-old daughter Nadia has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and a mood disorder. Surrounded by her legal team, she told us her daughter's nearly 2-day mandatory stay at a mental health center did more harm than good.
She's traumatized. She is not herself anymore. I don't know what the long-term effects are.
It happened here at Love Grove Elementary. In the sheriff's report, a responding social worker said the girl was a threat to herself and others, destroying school property and attacking staff. She was removed from the school and committed to a behavioral health center for psychiatric evaluation under Florida's Baker Act. At a press conference this week, Falk demanded answers.
Why was she Baker acted? Why wasn't she properly given the love and attention that she needed?
Duval County Schools tell CBS News Baker Act decisions are made by a third-party licensed mental health care professional, and they say we've reviewed the school's handling of this situation and find it to be compliant both with law and the best interests of this student and all other students at the school. But critics ask, is the Baker Act being overused, especially when it comes to school kids?
No, you're not going to an asylum.
In 2018 in Cocoa, Florida, this 12-year-old boy with autism was hauled off in a police cruiser. It was the boy's first day in middle school, and during a meltdown, he scratched himself and then made a suicidal reference. That's when the school resource officer acted. The boy's mother, Stacy Plonsky, says the school should have called her before enforcing the Baker Act.
The behavior plan outlined what to do if he makes verbal threats. They only had to follow the plan.
The number of children involuntarily transported to a mental health center in Florida has more than doubled in the last 15 years to about 36,000.
I absolutely think that the Baker Act is being overused.
This week, Florida's legislature is debating a major reform to the nearly 50-year-old law. The Jennifer Webb's bill would require better training for school officials and resource officers and establish more consistent rules on exactly when a parent should be notified that their child might be committed.
So it should only be used as a last resort. And Baker acting 6-year-olds just seems excessive to me.
Wow.
Webb believes funds allotted for schools after the high school shooting in Parkland can be used for better training. As for the 6-year-old girl in Jacksonville, her mother is now looking for a different school to place her in.
Wow. So let's talk about that, because that was a real life scenario. What are your thoughts as far as what they
China's blaming the US
shared
for this whole virus
about
thing.
that particular situation?
I think that actually abuts to some of the points we were just discussing. Specifically, Dr. Chris was talking about, how we, like, as a society, we tend to bottle things up. And I think another barrier to patients, not just patients, clients, and parents, working with treatment is respecting autonomy. And it's very evident, especially from that video, that that's not something that was done. We're people, we're human beings. We don't get everything right the first time. And when we're working with someone who perhaps is not ready to enter treatment or therapy, that's something that we need to respect. We need to provide that education. We need to explain, that there are risk of and consequences to these things happening. But the last thing that we need to do is infringe upon autonomy, especially when we're talking about a child and a parent. And that's, that sort of thing is just not acceptable. And, therapy and mental health, most mental health interventions, they don't work without cooperation. There's no point to even starting an intervention without cooperation.
I think the breakdown too with what we saw from the video is they didn't call the mother. So a lot of times when you reach out to the parent or you reach out to the natural support, they can come in and help diffuse the situation. There's another part to the video that shows when the officers came to pick up the little girl, 6-year-old, right? 6 years old. She was fine. You hear the audio on the body cam saying, there's nothing wrong with her. She's fine. So right then she was able to either redirect herself or use her coping skills or the techniques that she may have learned. And she was okay by the time they came and transported her to the facility. So me personally, I feel that was excessive. I think that at least contact the parent. Contact the parent.
And I would add to that, because both of you just said some things that I was kind of jotting some things down when I was looking at it, and I was all prepared for my little statement and everything. I am a firm believer that it is important to be transparent, because if you are transparent, it builds what I talked about earlier. It builds trust. And when you're not transparent, it brings that resistance that some parents already have, and they feel like you're hiding something from them. And I think that every parent should have a choice, and you should collaborate with that parent and don't take away their rights to make a decision, because like you said, parents sometimes know that, hey, I've experienced that trigger at home and this is what works at home. Give them a minute. They're calm down, then let's have a conversation with them. So I think it creates a lack of trust when you you handle a situation in the way that situation was handled by not contacting the parent and collaborating with the parent. So now the parent feels you're doing some things behind my back and I don't know how to trust that because you weren't transparent with me. And any decisions you make with someone's child, you must be transparent with that parent to let them know that, hey, this is what we found. This is what we think is best. What interventions you're using at home? Do you feel that we need to do this? And how can we support you to get your child the services you need? We can learn from you. You've experienced these things at home. What do we need to do here at school? Because ultimately we want to keep them in school. And if we're sending them out to these facilities for 2 days and they're missing instructional time, they're not learning. And especially if this is something that in which this little girl was able to calm down within minutes, I would assume. So I think, again, it goes back to what we've been talking about the whole time, that when you're not transparent with parents, it's going to create resistance and they don't trust. And that's going to be a negative, and it's going to impact the kid in a negative light.
I agree.
And I looked at it as a parent because I have a 7-year-old daughter. So in looking at it from that standpoint, being taken to the facility for 48 hours, she was calmed in. Did she even really know why she was being taken away from her parents? Was she old enough to really understand what she was about to go through and the processes and techniques that they did maybe share with her? At what point did she really process the true meaning of what was happening and why it was happening? Or did she ever process it? All she knew was, I have to go to this facility. She wanted to know, was she going to jail?
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the whole video, and I just can't imagine my daughter having to go through that, because like all of you have shared, when she was en route, she was a totally different child,
mm-hmm.
which goes along with having a mood disorder. And if she's already been diagnosed at that young age, I don't know that it was the right thing to do. As a parent, I would not have felt, and I would have too been upset that I wasn't contacted. And, she said she was contacted by a third-party source.
And that's increased trauma. I mean, the result, how is this going to affect the child that you took the child to a facility, and now that has increased the situation. It have increased the trauma that the child have experienced. I think it can be a traumatic experience for a child to know that now What did I do to deserve to be pulled from my mom for 2 days, or 48 hours? So I think that in the way that was handled, it could increase the trauma for the kid.
And even looking at the young man, he had a diagnosis that would cause him to behave in that manner sometimes. It had already been identified. So if you know through those diagnoses some of the side effects or things that may happen, then that was to be expected. His behavior was to be expected.
And I agree. I think, again, that's the purpose of the IEP plan, right? The individualized educational plan, or the BED. I think that, we have to adhere to what is documented. And again, it took a team to come up with the goals and the action plan for these plans for the students. So why not adhere to it? And I'm sure in that plan, somewhere, or even in her crisis plan, I'm sure it said contact the parent.
Definitely.
So what else you got for us, Natasha?
Well, I'm just curious to know, how do you guys, so for example, because I'm working in day treatment. So I work in day treatment. So I have parents that refuse IEPs. I have parents that refuse a BIP, and the child is constantly getting suspended, and we're almost running into a brick wall. And the only reason why they even take an option of placing that child in day treatment is so that, because they're tired of them getting suspended. But then we have a child, they're refusing medication, they're refusing pretty much whatever the basic bare minimum is for day treatment, they'll do that. But other than that, nothing else. And we don't see any progress. And then it becomes the school's fault, and all of the mental health specialists becomes all of our faults. So how you guys deal with situations like that? And as far as like reentry for the child, and what are we looking at as far as their outcomes to success academically when they're having so many behavioral issues?
Go, Maurice.
Okay. I mean, and most definitely we deal with that. And I think it becomes the time that, like you said, just out of human nature, I think parents, I think they mean well, but it's they don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know, you just don't know. And I think so they kind of resist those things because, like you said, they are tired of their child getting suspended, but they know that when your child is on an individual educational plan, that's going to require some time as well. It's going to require your child to come out. And sometimes parents just don't understand what's going on with their own child when it comes to the mental health issues. And I'll give an example, like a parent, you say, we've noticed that your child has some problems focusing. And one of the things a parent will quickly say is that, Mr. Harris, my child can sit and watch and play a video game all day. And I said, do you understand why? Because a video game is interactive, so it's stimulating him. And that's why it appears that he's being calm. I said, but when that video game is not in front of him, he's very, very active. And so I think the parents think that. And again, I think they feel like they are a failed parent, or they feel like there's something wrong when their child is experiencing these behaviors, and they feel it's not something wrong in a positive way. They feel it's in a negative way and feel it's in a judgment on them as a parent. So, I mean, how I deal with it, again, it goes back to having those heart-to-heart conversations with the parents and say, hey, let's just at least give it a try. If the parent don't involve the mental health agencies in my building, we believe in sitting down with the parent and saying, hey, let's create a plan. And it's not even an IEP plan. It's a Maurice Harris principal plan with the parent and the kid. These are the things we're going to do. Who is a trusted adult that you can do? Because we've all experienced IEP meetings. We all experience the interventions. And when we're doing MTSS, when you're following those tiers, you have to understand that, hey, we're not trying to label the kid. We're trying to provide interventions. So even with or without that IEP plan, you still can provide the interventions that kid needs in that class, in that school, to make sure that kid is successful. The parent rather hear it from you as just saying, these are some things we're going to try, opposed to saying, hey, I'm going to document these things, and these are the things that we're going to try. And as a principal, my staff understand that with or without an IEP, it is very important that we provide those interventions that every individual child needs. Every individual child needs a plan, whether it is an IEP plan because of a learning disability, whether it is because of some trauma they have experienced in their life. They need a plan. And I think that when we encounter those things where they're refusing the services that are documented throughout the state, you develop your own in-house plan and say, hey, we're going to have an IEP, but it is not a state legalized IEP, but we're going to follow the legal process, and we can just provide those interventions, because IEPs are nothing but providing interventions.
Right. And I would piggyback off of that. So once you get to that point, most of the time they will conform because they see that you're giving them special attention and they, the relationship piece again. But I have had to bring in the parents, the kid, especially close to the end of the year and say, hey, we have done A, B, C, D, and E. Now, do you have any more suggestions? Because I don't have any more here in the building and we come to school to learn. So
Right.
while some things are petty, and they are, but they disrupt the learning environment because you have 30 kids sitting in the class. So when you change the mindset of how they're looking at the issue at hand, sometimes you can change. But if they know that it's the last straw, and if they can't adhere to these expectations, then they can't come back to the school, then typically you'll see a behavior because they don't want that child at home. They do want them in a learning environment. So once you have those crucial conversations, it's most of the time pretty successful.
And I think that, again, it's awesome to hear the leadership in our school systems, how you all are sharing and very knowledgeable and in tune with your students and their needs and the family's needs as well. Because it doesn't just stop at the education. You're right. I think there's some level of case management that you all do unbeknownst to you, but you're doing that because it takes all of that, takes that wraparound to really support our students, to support our children. So since we understand we have a handle, and this kind of answers the next question, because it's kind of like you have a great understanding of pre the current pandemic that we're in, this whole pre-COVID-19 situation. You all understand before COVID what the impact is, your role, how do you wrap around supports for your students, right? Now, fast forward. This COVID-19 pandemic situation has thrown a monkey wrench into everything, especially in the educational system. So with the upcoming school year, what are your thoughts on the students' mental health and self-care? So as far as them getting ready to transition back, or if they are, I'm not sure what you're at liberty to share, but how do you think that's going to look on the mental health aspect of things now for students?
I think it depends on how learning is going to look when we start back in the fall. And right now, we do not know exactly how it's going to look. I think that if it depends on how it looks. I mean, if kids are able to get back in the building, they're kind of get back into a routine, we may have to go back and close some gaps that have opened up due to this because of the lack of having that trusted adult outside of the home that they were used to, or because sometimes just send an individual person kind of brighten those kids' day, and they have missed that. And so I think that it just depends on how school is going to look when we return. And that's what we don't know right now. Everyone is waiting. But I think also just knowing, even just me, myself, and my staff and my admin team, and I'm sure Ms. Harris as well. I mean, we're experiencing some situations ourselves dealing with, I guess, mental issues right now. The fact that we are disconnected from our kids. And I had graduation this morning, and it kind of relieved my soul to be able to see my kids in my building again and to be able to smile with them and everything, because they have been missing that. And to be honest with you, I've been missing that. And that is my motivation on a day-to-day. And coming into the office with Kim today and sharing an email that I got from a kid after graduation who was unable to see me after graduation, but said, I just want to thank you. That's where the pay comes from. Those emails that you get showing that, you mean a lot and you've impacted my life. And I just want to thank you for being there for me. Those things are what matters to educators, real true educators, if you're in it for the right reasons. And I know for myself, and I know Kim, because we worked along together, that we're in it for the right reasons. And it's for kids, and it's not about the adults. Now, we need to help the kids' parents. We're going to do that as well, because that's for the kid. And so that is what, makes it work and make it valuable for us. And I think that's what we're waiting for. We are experiencing some mental health issues right now, that we are disconnected from our kids. And so we do the things like calling our kids. And I freely give my kids my cell phone number. I have a school cell phone. I give it to them. Call me any time of the night, any time of the day when you need to talk. You just want to see how I'm doing, or you just need someone to talk to. I'm here for you. And I never turn away from a kid that need me. So just like they're experiencing it, we are experiencing it. How are we going to close that gap? If they come back in the building, we're going to love on them. We're going to love on them and give them what they've been missing from the school. Not saying they're not getting it from home, but sometimes you need that different type of love outside of the home. And we're going to be there to give that to them. So hopefully we can kind of bridge that and connect them and get them back on track. And also look at their individual needs and say, hey, this is what the gaps are. We're going to be here with you. You're not going to have to do this by yourself. We're going to push you. We're going to be right here with you and hold your hand and get you on task. So I think that's for me. And I think that's where I am with, and I think that's what we're going to experience. But I just don't know how it's going to look when they return, because we don't know how school is going to look. If we virtual, that could become a problem, and we would have to look at what are our steps and what plan we're going to have, which gives us now the summer to have a plan. Because in my building, we are talking about, well, if we are virtual, what are we going to do for those kids that we know needs those services, or we know just need that? And if it takes driving out to the home and doing what we need to do, that's what we're going to do.
Wow. And see, again, you pretty much answered all the rest of the questions, because Natasha and I, when we sat down and we were strategizing on what do we want to know and what do we feel the community wants to know, right? And the whole COVID-19, I think that has created a level of anxiety across the board for students, parents, everybody, even the pets in the house, because they tired of seeing everybody at the house every day. So I think that it's interesting to hear that you don't really know what's going to happen. And that's the truth. We don't know. Just like we didn't know what to do when this happened. But I think we adapted as best we could as a community, as a school system. And so I'm interested to see what you all plan to put together, because you all already got creative with graduation, which I found was interesting when you said y'all had graduation this morning. So how does that look, Kim? And well, Kim, you probably didn't have graduation, but Maurice, how did that look today when y'all had graduation?
Well, I will be honest with you. What our district did was they sent out a survey to our families and gave some different options. And the families' options, because we know our community, match what we told them that our families were going to want. And we did everything we could to give them what they wanted, but also make sure we stay within the guidelines of the state and follow policies. So for our graduation, we had a face-to-face graduation with social distancing. You can Google the graduation. It was live streamed and it's available. And we had social distancing. We were out on the fields measuring seats from seats. We brought it out onto the football field. We had to limit the number of guests that can come. However, we told them 2 guests is better to have 2 than have none. We offer suggestions of how the family still can come together out after graduation to kind of still bond and celebrate. So we had a face-to-face graduation. I couldn't shake hands. The kids were coming up trying to say, well, you're going to shake my hand. I was like, we can't shake hands on this. You know, we can't shake hands. We have to make sure we stay in the guidelines that the state have outlined when it comes to social distancing and things like that. So we had a face-to-face graduation. It was no different from any other graduation except for we all had masks. Our district was nice enough and generous enough to buy every school mask that had their school logo on it for every kid and every family member, for every staff. So we all wore our mask and we all was out there and we social distanced. We made sure they marched in 6 feet apart. We had them sitting 9 feet from left to right, 10 feet front to back. And it spread out over our field, and actually it looked really, really nice. And our kids, it was what they wanted, because a parent, you know, you could do virtual, but a parent wants to see that child walk across that stage, and they want that principal hand their child something. So we could not do our normal handoff and shake hands, but we were able to hand them a diploma, and they were happy about that. And so that's how we did it in Pitt County. You know, maybe we were going to get some negative feedback from people saying, you guys are bold to try this, but we'll do what we can for kids. We will do whatever we can for kids.
Okay. And just to piggyback, so middle school usually does a promotion ceremony from 8th grade to high school. So last night we did a drive-through. So we had balloons and all the staff came, and the families actually drove through, honked the horns. We handed out a cup. Everybody had on masks as well. Just something with our logo on it. But they came with signs and balloons, and I didn't know how many people would show up, but we had a great turnout. And even though I'm just connecting here with the families, it was still so nice to again see their faces, like Maurice said, because that is what we're here for. And March 13th, you know, it shut down. the next week, it felt like a teacher work day for a couple of days. And then it all set into us that, oh my God, the reason that we really have this job, they're not here. We're not here for the adults, we're here for the children. So it was great to see them come through last night. Even though it was a honk, they were hanging out the windows and they had signs in school, so socially the kids need to be around people too, which they're not able to right now in a lot of cases. So they miss that too. They might not miss the academic part, but they miss school.
Right.
Wow.
And I'll add one, and I know I don't want to talk too much, but I will add that when you work in a school and you feel like you're walking in your purpose by working with kids, when that is snatched from you due to COVID, you start to feel like I'm no longer walking in my purpose. And that's what I have been struggling with since March the 13th. It's like, I don't feel like I'm walking in my purpose really because I'm not directly interacting with my kids. So we did ride out to the community to see as many kids as we can when we were out in that community because we need that. So I'm sitting here today, we're talking about mental health services. And basically, that was our mental health service right there. We had to see kids to feel like, know that we're still walking in our purpose and that we're doing what we were led to do and why we do what we do.
And I wanted to throw in a couple of things about that because there's an exclamation mark in some of the things that we've been talking about that I just really wanted to accentuate. And that is that mental health is not held with the children, but it's a community experience, and that the adults who are working with kids are also triggered. We have our own set of issues and competencies and concerns. And so it is a challenge that needs to be addressed. And I know with Durham Public Schools, we're having Think Aloud Thursdays for our teachers to come together and be able to share some of the concerns that they have had with one another. But I just wanted to make sure to emphasize that if a teacher or an adult or a principal is stressed or a parent is stressed, then it's going to make it much more difficult to actually communicate effectively with kids. And then some of those behaviors that we would otherwise interpret as benign for us become much bigger than they need to be because of our own perspective.
Wow. So what you think, Natasha? Did they answer your question about the whole COVID-19 situation?
Well, I always got more questions. Always. So
go ahead.
My next question is, now, typically I noticed that there's a disconnect with mental health services over the summer. Some parents will engage. If they're not in school, they let it go. So now it's been a longer distance, an amount of time that the kids haven't been in school. And so there's a possibility that they haven't received any type of mental health services. So my first question is, how is it and how long does it take to readjust a child back into the academic setting that, once you get them right and re-engaged in services, how long does that typically take? And what are your thoughts on what's going to happen when you do, or maybe not, or hypothetically speaking, if you do go back to school, what is it going to look like?
I personally think it depends on the individual child when it comes to the length of time it's going to take for them to readjust. In our district, we have not ignored mental health services or any kind of services during this time. In our district, they have talked to us about making sure that we're still providing services for kids, whether it is virtual or not. We are still providing services for kids and letting parents know. So just letting them know the services are still available, that they did not cut off. And also, again, talking with those parents that their kids are really benefiting from those services, and say, what are the barriers or what are the situations that's preventing you to continue to get those services, so that we can make sure your child is still getting those services, so that the gaps don't increase, and that when we do come back, and that's what we always talk about, say when we do come back, that your child can bounce right back, and we can start fresh and just keep going. So I think just continuously making sure those you are sending out information to let parents know that the services are still available, and doing what you need as an educator or in the system to make sure those kids are getting it if there are some barriers that's preventing them from getting it while they're out. Even if you say, hey, I'll go with you, because those kids, they feel comfortable if you'll go with them. But we do what we have to do. And I think we go far beyond our call of duty as our role because of where our heart is with it. And so we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure that they're not losing those services, even during the summer, as well as during the COVID-19. COVID will not defeat us when it comes.
I know that's right. All right. I know that's right. You get a clap on that one, Maurice.
Yes, definitely. And listen, just name your school one more time. You got parents chiming in here. They may move districts.
It is North Pitt High School, the best high school in the United States of America. North Pitt High School. We have exceeded growth 5 years in a row.
If I could hear from Mr. Nash, what is your take on, re-engagement in services and things like that? Because honestly, our teenagers because I'm mental health all day, and our teenagers are disengaging, they're disappearing, they're hiding. They'll cut the virtual devices on and leave you there. Saying, yeah, Mom, I participated. So what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Miss Natasha. First off, I think we need to be aware that it's coming down the pipe. In this country, just to put things in perspective a little bit, in 2017, the CDC said out of all of America, 47,000 people took their lives through suicide. And as mental health professionals, we know how far forward we lean on the issue of suicide. We know the amount of money and resources that we put into that. Since COVID started in February up till now, which is a matter of months, in this year, we have lost 105,000 plus souls. And we need to approach it with the same gravity. We talked earlier about putting labels and how that can create resistance with folks not wanting to talk about mental health care. And I think it applies in this situation because that label is scary. And when it comes to the social isolation that's been imposed by the pandemic, we kind of define mental disorders as dysfunction. And a lot of mental disorders sit right below the surface. You never see it. And then a catalyst comes along, like a pandemic or, a lot of social isolation. And all of a sudden you've got these little icebergs of problems that start breaching the surface. And we know that social isolation is a trigger for a great deal of dysfunction and mental disorders, including depression, including anxiety, and the list goes on and on and on. So, I don't want to feed into the anxiety. I just think that it's something that we need to be prepared for. And from listening to the other folks on this panel, it's obvious that it is taken seriously and that folks are trained to observe the types of warning signs that we see in students that are going to be obvious, like disruptive type behaviors. But also, I think that we need to pay attention to the things that aren't so obvious because, with 105,000 folks, you've been touched some way, somehow by this pandemic. And, rather traumatizing. And there are going to be the signs and symptoms of trauma in children and adolescents are not as obvious as they are in adults. You might see that apathy in school when it comes to assignments. It might be, just somebody not doing the things that they normally do. And the professionals that are in the schools that already know these kids and, the staff taking that extra step to think about it. Well, is this a discipline thing? Or does this look like something else?
Wow.
But I hope that, that we move forward with that type of awareness of what's coming down the pipe and what we need to do with that.
All right. Great. Mr. Soto, did you want to respond as well? Come on, let's hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been very, very heartened by my district's response. And one of the things that I have heard both in words and in action is that whatever happens when we come back in whatever form, we are not going to sit down at the desk and say, okay, now let's start getting the academics again. I want to give a big shout out to restorative practices because we've really worked very hard in different public schools on allowing both students and adults the ability to have their voices heard in circles and also in the way that we are approaching discipline to the best of our ability. We've been working on a screening system for the return so that we can better understand exactly who is suffering and if they need additional support, provide that support. We're going to have wellness champions at every school who are going to be receiving supplementary training in trauma-informed teaching, as well as additional restorative practice and mental health. And so this is a broad effort, and I think that the answer is as long as it takes, as long as it takes.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think that at this point, we just want to kind of bring things full circle and maybe just kind of see if there's a special message that you guys would like to just send to the population that you serve or the school, or if you want to give just a statement just for awareness. We definitely want to hear from all of you guys just to close us out and bring things full circle for that awareness and for mental health in the schools. So I'll let Ms. Vicki do the countdown because I think our blocks are different.
All right, no problem. And as Natasha mentioned, we want to bring this full circle, right? You know, mental health is a common thread in all aspects of our life. And a lot of times people either do understand and realize that or don't want to realize that. And so what we want to do through these gravity talks is continue to bring it full circle and bring everyone to the same table. And again, today's panel was focused on mental health in the schools. You all have done an awesome job sharing your thoughts, your understandings, your heart for the students that you serve and for the families that we serve. And I think that is just the wow factor that makes us as humanity so awesome. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic threw a curveball, and I don't think any of us had anticipated that. But look at how resilient we have been as a community, as a school system, as a family support. So I want to commend the panel before we let you go ahead and share your key nuggets for folks to walk away with if there's nothing else that you want to share with everyone, that one thing that they can take away from this virtual panel today that can help get them through the upcoming days, upcoming months, and, you know, throughout the year. So the way my Hollywood squares are working right now, let's see, we'll go ahead and let Ms. Kim share.
Great. So I would just say to everybody, just to know that you're not alone. You are not the only one in this world that is going through whatever issue it may be. And no matter how small it is, if it's an issue to you, get services for it. And to break the stigma, it is okay. You know, everybody goes through something in their life. We all react to situations in a different way, and we go through different type of situations, but nobody's life is perfect. And I spend a lot of time telling all kids and parents that. And again, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. We're all in this together. So just do not feel alone, and seek the services and reach out to people. That there's somebody somewhere that's going and willing to connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. So, Dr. Chris, the nugget.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to say, because I do counsel educators as well, and I would imagine that a lot of folks on this call are both human service providers in some way, and that is, if I only have $5, then I can't give you 10. And there is a real vital importance to making sure that we are taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of the students we serve.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Chris. Mr. Nash.
I would just like to add that we are stronger together because we can leverage everyone's strengths, and that collaboration is the key to success, especially in a system as large as the one we're talking about. Adapting and overcoming is something that humans are pre-programmed to do. And as long as we dust ourselves off when we make mistakes and keep going forward, we'll get there.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Mr. Maurice.
I would just lead by saying it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to ignore the resources that are out there that's available for you when you are not okay. So if you are experiencing some things or that you feel is different, reach out and utilize the resources that are available, and you're going to be okay.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Natasha.
I just want to say thank you all from every conversation. I mean, grocery store, the bank, to go get food, doesn't matter. Every parent, I will say this, and I'm going to speak for them. They really appreciate you guys, educators, principals, teachers. You guys rock, because right now, everything that you tried to tell them, everything that you tried to share with them about their child, they believe you now. They believe you and they need you now, because there was a time they don't act like that at home. That was never my child. But I promise you, I've gotten reports that it's true. It's true. I know it is. And so now they can't wait for you guys to open up. And you know what? You got my vote for that raise. You got my vote. Definitely. We're seeing now, I don't know where you guys got this work from. We didn't do that when I was in school. This stuff is hard now. But definitely tell all your teachers they rock, and we definitely appreciate them. And we know that teachers are just as essential as anybody else, because parents have been struggling.
So, again, thank you. I think the common thread that we all shared is how vital and important community is. And that, again, I believe that we are definitely stronger together. I think that we can't do half of what we do without each other. The school system, the families, like Kim mentioned that, when she realized when COVID really hit, it was like, wait a minute, the folks that we serve, which are the students, they're not here anymore. So now what? So I think that there's a level of appreciation and more compassion. I think that when we do transition back into the brick and mortar part of school, I think that there's just going to be a different level of love. And, of course, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. We work hard, but I think at the end of the day, it's just going to rejuvenate or revitalize some of that heart that had been tugged before, because, burnout is real. We didn't even get to talk about burnout and self-care amongst our teachers and amongst the staff. So that may warrant for a part 2 for mental health in the school. So be ready. Like I said, I may invite y'all back.
Okay.
And on live TV, tell me I want to get a commitment that if I reach out to you, you're going to come back so we can talk about burnout and self-care and how that impacts our teachers and our staff in the school system. Okay. All right. So again, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. I think we had an awesome panel. I really pray that those who tuned in and those who continue to watch the video have walked away with some true nuggets that will help with them understanding, again, how we can continue to be stronger together, how the mental health in schools can coexist, and that, again, together we'll get through this current pandemic, and we'll look forward to an upcoming great school year. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and God bless y'all. Have an awesome day.
And congratulations to the class of 2020. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the class of woo-woo. Yes. So y'all have an awesome afternoon. So we can all wait. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all stay on.